before we can do anything else, I need y'all to comment on the color of this shirt. Is it A, a disgusting, puke green, yucky color, or B, actually somewhat pleasant and evocative, I don't know, of whatever. Comment below, because I feel like it's controversial. I don't usually like this color, but I kind of dig this shirt. So curious to hear what y'all have to say. But that being said, welcome back to the channel, or if it is your first time here, welcome especially. I'm Sally, I'm so glad you stopped by. I am here with my Yoki latte, getting geared up and ready to go for today's workout. But in the meantime, this is gonna be part 3 of our Pro-Metabolic workout series, specifically focused on how to weightlift. And if you are wondering why this type of training is considered pro-metabolic, with a 3-finger, like pro-metabolic, there we go, quotes, then I encourage you to check out my initial pro-metabolic workout routine video, which I'll link below. And if you have not yet seen the first part of this series, then check that out as well, also linked below, because that's gonna give you the foundations for all of the movements that we're gonna be going over today. That being said, today is all things leg day, the best kind of day, as I'm sure many ladies would agree, but we're focusing on our 3 foundational movement patterns that are going to pertain most directly to the lower body. So we've got our squat, our hinge, and our lunge. And I'm doing this video a little bit differently in terms of format. We're sitting here talking, kind of narrating, reason being, I did the last 2 at like 11:30 p.m. midnight at the gym, and that is just not going to work for me this week. Not gonna be good for my well-being or my sanity. And so what I did is I took the camera in when I did legs earlier in the week. I filmed the full workout. I just didn't talk to the camera, so it could be a more subtle setup. And now we're gonna go over everything now. To give you some parameters for what's happening, we are gonna start with a warm-up, focusing specifically on some muscle groups that I find I have a little bit more trouble activating. Then we are gonna move into our squats. We're gonna move then to our hinge. And lastly, we'll do some lunges before, I guess really lastly, a little glute burnout at the very end. That being said, let's get into the warm-up. For my lower body warm-ups, I love to use my booty bands. These are just fabric with elastic loop resistance bands that help add resistance to any sort of movement that you're doing, primarily lower body, because these are heavier, but you can use them for upper body as well. I will link them below. They're also great for on-the-go workouts. But I start with just some body weight squats using the band. You can also do it without, but I want to get nice and warm here through the hips, and I like to focus on the medial glutes, the outer part of your glutes. No set number of repetitions here, just keep squatting until you feel nice and warm. And then I'm gonna hold it at the bottom of my squat, and I'm gonna do both lateral and front to back walks, about 2 to 3 steps in one direction, 2 to 3 steps the other way, and then front and back. And this is just continuing to help get my hips nice and warm and get me used to different kind of planes of movement as I'm preparing to go into my heavier lifts. Then I like to do some body weight lunges, really focusing on 2 90-degree angles, tracking my knees with my toes, chest tall, perpendicular to the ground. Again, those 2 90-degree angles here, engaging all the muscles in those legs. And then I like to take it down to the ground to keep our feet glued together. Knees are stacked on top of each other. We don't let the feet separate, but we pull the knees apart to really work that medial glute. I do usually 30 repetitions on one side, and then I will flip it over 30 repetitions on the other side. And then I like to finish my warm up with about 16 to 20 banded hip bridges, maintaining resistance on the band to keep engaging through the medial glutes. I press through the heels, driving up, squeeze, control it on the way back down. But let's get into the main event, to our first main movement, that squat, our heavy squats. Now, just a note on this first is that you are gonna see me barbell squatting here. You do not need to barbell back squat. That really isn't necessary. In fact, I was having a conversation with my chiropractor, who's also an expert when it comes to fitness and biomechanics, just the other day. And he was saying that he honestly does not back squat anymore, and that he doesn't really recommend it to anyone because it can cause irritation through the shoulders and the traps, which is most relevant to me. And also it's kind of loading your body in a funky way, so there can be more of a burden on that lower back. However, it is still something that I will do occasionally just to kind of test my progress. And I wanted to show y'all how to do it properly here, because I know that's something that a lot of people are going for, and that's considered a classic movement. So I started out with about 4 sets of 6 to 8 repetitions. I would use a heavy weight for this. I used more of a moderate weight so I could really focus on my form. I have a little bit of trouble sometimes keeping my knees right over my ankles, which is what I was focusing on. And we always want to hit at least parallel. If you're not able to hit parallel, let's go lighter with the weight. And before we do any of that, I encourage you always to just do one set with the bar to kind of set that plane of motion, get nice and comfortable in it, and then we can go ahead and start adding weight, working our way up until we find something that allows us to do these 6 to 8 repetitions with beautiful form, but which leaves us feeling like we probably couldn't do more than 1 or 2 more after that. So with these squats, just as with our banded squats, our weight stays in the heels the whole time. So if you have trouble with that, think about wiggling your toes, and then we are gonna sink down, really control it with your quads till we get to parallel. There's a gentle hinge at the hips, but we never wanna curve through the spine. Shoulder blades are retracted the whole time. Neutral spine through the neck, at the chin, drive through the heels to come up to the top, squeezing the hamstrings and the glutes, controlling it down using the quads, driving up using the hamstrings and the glutes. Now, there's so many other ways to do squats, and I wanted to show you one of those. So I also did 2 sets of a dumbbell squat, holding it down low because it was really heavy, but you can totally take it to the chest for more of a goblet squat. So holding it in the middle, nice wide stance here, weight in the heels sinking down, squeezing the glutes to come up to the top. And this I did a little bit higher repetition. I did about 12 reps for 3 sets. And that's a good way to add a little bit of variation to your workout, even if we're focusing primarily on one functional movement pattern. You can squat one way and then another way, changing up your stance a little bit, but just be mindful with our squats. We do always want those feet at least hip width apart, sometimes even wider. Next up, we are going to move into our hinging plane of movement, or range of motion rather, movement pattern. I don't know why I have trouble with that. But for our hinge, we are doing a stiff-legged, or also known as a Romanian deadlift. And you can do this with the barbell or with dumbbells. I'm doing it with the barbell today. Again, I encourage you to do at least 1 set warming up with the bar. But here, think about straight legs, but soft knees. And our movement is initiated at the hips. Our shoulder blades are rolled down and back. We are going to keep the weight in the heels to start. Drive your hips back to bring your shoulders to about hip level. And then we're going to use the hamstrings and the glutes to come back up to the top, hinging forwards and coming back up to the top. The knees will naturally bend just a little bit to allow you to complete this range of motion, but that hinge is the focus. Just as we did with the squats, we're going to warm up and then you're going to go ahead and add your weight. I did it this week at about 12 repetitions, 3 sets. I find that feels really good for me when it comes to these stiff-legged deadlifts. It's a good kind of set and rep range for me, but you can choose to do it that way, or maybe to do 4 or 5 sets of more like 6 to 8 at a heavier weight. So after my stiff-legged deadlifts, I moved into my last functional movement pattern. That is my lunge. I'm gonna be honest with you, I often have a hard time with lunges just because of a quad and a knee issue, and this was a day where my quad was feeling really aggravated, so I decided to go a little bit lighter with it. I just went back over to the functional training area and I grabbed a kettlebell, and I'm holding the kettlebell at my chest here. You can totally hold them down by your sides if that's more comfortable. Dumbbells are great, or you can take a barbell to your shoulders, but we are going to step back just as we did in that warm-up, staggering our stance. Think about staying on the railroad tracks. Then we are going to bend down till we find 2 90-degree angles, drive up leading with that front leg until you are fully standing once again. So at the end of my workout, I love to do a little burnout exercise, usually focused on the hamstrings and the glutes. Sometimes I'll focus on the quads, but today was hamstrings and glutes, and I just took it back to a weighted hip bridge. I grabbed that same kettlebell, I put it on my pelvis. I maintained my feet, or kept my feet about hip width apart. I drove up through the heels, squeezing the glutes at the top. It's nice to find a pause here to get the most bang for your buck, we'll say, and then control it on the way back down. And I did about 3 sets of 12 as my little burnout. Other fun burnout options are going to be a Bulgarian split squat. Those are brutal, but so fun, like lunging with your back leg elevated, hinging slightly forwards. You can always do something more plyometric if your joints are happy with that. So something that involves jumping or explosive movement. And you can totally do something like a hip thrust where your shoulders are elevated on a bench. But honestly, that is it. That concludes today's workout. Just make sure you are recovering well. I want to leave a little note here, which is it is okay to train your body hard. I think that is kind of a misconception, and I know I've shared about this before. That's a misconception in the pro-metabolic space, is that, oh, you don't want to work out too hard. I would think about it like this. If you want to train hard, think about training like an athlete. If you are going to train like an athlete, you are also going to have to recover like an athlete, and you are going to have to support and respect your body like an athlete. This ties into a conversation, a little comment exchange I was having with a viewer the other day, and I wanted to share that little bit of encouragement with you. Your body is deserving of so much respect. It was beautifully made, and we are so blessed to get to be on this journey of just strengthening ourselves and living into our potential, both physically and spiritually and mentally and all of that stuff. So don't be afraid to train hard as long as your body is supported, as long as you are recovering well and you are honoring it, which means listening when something is bothering you and looking to solve that problem, not just blindly pushing through it. But that's it for today. I hope this format was okay. I appreciate you being here. Don't hesitate to let me know if you have any questions, comments, concerns in the comments section. Don't forget to subscribe and come back for next week's total body workout. Until then, bye.